Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Rail Yard. Today we're in Frisco, Texas at Topia.
I'm getting something. Do we need him?
Yes, you need the DeLorean.
Let's do DeLorean.
Yes. You see it? That blue that can come up in there? That's it.
Construction right now. And then we need to launch a big capital campaign for the early next year to have, fingers crossed, parking, restrooms, and maybe, but
Here is the inside of a 1920s Pullman sleeper coach.
held anymore. So it's super imperative that we get this stuff out of the weather and then into our workshop and slowly try to fix them. And that was kind of the whole reason, again, to reiterate why we're here, is to acquire this kind of space to do a better display and also better at preservation by getting the stuff out of the weather.
Here is a dining car from the 1930s that was used on the Katy Railroad.
Yeah, this car is kind of a special treat. We don't show it that often, but yeah, this is a testament to what, an organization can do with the backing financially is the big thing. And this was acquired for only, I think, about $1,500 in 1964.
Here is the kitchen.
Be inside the building. Two on the west side will be the workshop tracks. And then we have two outer tracks to use for switching. So just kind of walk and talk. The yellow one, the black one, these first two are the same locomotive built by Fairbanks Morris, this H1244 model. The yellow one is a mechanical restoration project, ran for Southern Pacific in California on the boat docks, and then down near Houston, Texas at Portland, down near Houston, Portland Cement Company, and it just got a new water pump a couple summers ago, so we need to actually get water in it to flush out the cooling system. And the black one will be in the black, white, and silver lettering, ATSF. This one ran under the Santa Fe Railroad. It no longer operates, and I'm not honestly sure of its status. But the next one I really like to point out, and feel free to ask questions as we go, is the rusty one up here on the right. So believe it or not, this real rusty locomotive is fairly close to operating. That's what's kind of interesting about just looking at this stuff from the outside. Some of them look okay, but they're wrecked on the inside. Some look bad on the outside, but mechanically or inside they're in maybe better condition. And this is from the early 1940s. It's from American Locomotive Company. It's an RSD1 is the model, and it was the first six-powered axle hooded diesel electric freight locomotive. And RS is for road switcher, so it could do the slow switching work in here, but go out on the road on the outside of the fence. And in 1941, this technology had only been sold for about 16 years, so diesel electrics were still pretty new. And this ends up running for the United States Army. That was reassembled by the 762nd Diesel Shop Battalion that was a part of the 3rd Railway, I think, Division in Iran during World War II. This moved supplies for the Eastern Front between the United States and the Soviet Union via the Mideast during the Second World War. I don't know much about it. If I ever have free time, which I don't really have too much free time because our staff is so small, but I'd like to research its career back stateside after the war. According to some early literature that was, I guess, passed down from Texas Industries, the concrete company who ran it, they bought it from the United States Army at, I guess, government surplus auction. But I'd like to kind of know what it did in the late 40s through the 60s before it ran in Texas at a concrete company unloading concrete mix. And that's why it looks terrible, because the limestone from the concrete mix is really corrosive to the body. But it's close to operational status. And if you see a freight train go by later today or on the tour, you see these big 6-axle, 6-powered axle diesel electric locomotives with the body like this. I like to say this was the grandfather of the modern day freight locomotive, but the first of that style. Though in the 40s, this was the rear, that was the front going that direction. But today, the way they're oriented, the cab is at the front of the locomotive. It looked pretty in 1999 too, from the photos I've seen of when it was donated. But I don't know if it was the right type of paint to begin with, but it was probably just covering up a lot of the underlying corrosion from one. At that time, it was a 50-year-old locomotive, and it worked pretty hard in a harsh work environment of a concrete company, and it's peeled pretty good, and all that steel is just sadly exposed. But it needs to be sandblasted and repainted, and I'd like to paint it back, and maybe it's army black or whatever it would have been in. It would be a unique locomotive paint scheme. I think it was like black and orange, or I don't think it was that olive drab and white or anything like that. But let's see. To be towed on that track from Dallas. It went to Dallas to Irving, Irving to Frisco. Yeah, this is Union Pacific 4018's tender. 25,000 gallons of water, 28 tons of coal for fuel. And we got it parked here in November. These were the last two tracks to get built. And we got the world's largest steam locomotive and world's largest diesel electric locomotive. Both were used only by Union Pacific, parked here in early November. And this is Big Boy, number 4018. And I guess y'all have seen 4014 by your shirts. So where'd y'all see it?
Everywhere.
Everywhere? I got to see it in Fort Worth last year. So some of you are probably familiar, but if not, about the Big Boy, these were designed in the 40s to go over the mountains of Utah and Wyoming. And as they were phased out and then retired late 50s, early 60s, only 8 of them survived. And they went to places like the State Fair of Texas or the State Fairgrounds in California, where they were doing a kind of an exhibit like we were doing in Dallas. And then 50 plus years later, actually it'd be 60 years by the time it debuted, Union Pacific actually rebuilt one of these. And they took one that was in California where the air was much drier, so it hadn't rusted like a lot of our stuff in this climate in Texas, this part of Texas at least. But yeah, these were amazing. 133 feet, just about, just a little under 1.2 million pounds in weight. And they operated about 15 years or so each. And our Big Boy, when it was phased out, was sent to Green River, Wyoming. And then eventually, that was into September 1957, was donated and arrived, I think, in August of 1964 to Dallas, Texas. So it was shipped down by various railroads, towing it down to Dallas for exhibition. And we still have a little work to do on it. It'll never run again, but we do need to put the rest of the linkage on the driving wheel trucks right here. We took a lot of these parts off just so there wasn't a lot of resistance when the wheels, when the axles were turning rather, to get towed. Yeah, these things were quite the accomplishment. They were built to move a 7.2 million pound freight train east from Utah into Wyoming over the steeper side of the grade of the Wasatch Mountains. And they also wanted the capability to do a mile a minute on level terrain. And for these big modern diesel electrics were lightweight compared to a steam engine and all their electric traction motors, and the way they can accelerate, a mile a minute's no big deal. Even in this time period, a passenger steam locomotive could pull a train a mile a minute and faster. But for freight, because it was so heavy, you went pretty slow. But this had that capability of speed and strength. All right. See you, Jim. All right. We'll definitely never run a steam locomotive just because it's really close to operational conditions. But we're trying to get a grant. We're actually finishing up the application now. Some of these, but they only usually get repainted when they go back in for upgrades to be changed to newer steam dieselization, and that's what happened to this locomotive. Within about 5 years of service, they were already on the way out, and about 5 years later, it was out of a job, sitting in St. Louis by 1952. But it's up in Dallas, Texas in the mid-1900s.
Here's the cab of the Frisco 4501.
Parked on that track and just try to build your stainless steel build, just build the different time period trains up and down the tracks. This one burned 6,500 gallons of oil and fuel. Over here is the one I referred to at the beginning of the tour, number 7. You're welcome to walk over there. Rock road bed just to support the weight of all the dump trucks and equipment coming in and out to load out all the dirt. Just get back to work over there. It's just kind of a wet fit for about 3 weeks. You're kind of a exclamation point on the end of a freight train up until the 1980s, and I always find that fascinating. The more I read about cabooses and study them, but
Here is the
a couple
inside
volunteers
of a
replaced a lot of the wood
caboose.
over a few years. So good structurally.
Never know.
Here's the cabooses Cupid.
Skill and kind of planning, was you got so many cars, you want to start kind of being somewhat spread the radio. You can talk, but back then the talking was flags, lanterns. It's got to use hand signals, and the whistle wasn't just to make noise to tell people to. I'll explain it when everybody goes down. The overheated bearings and everything. Need a path again until they get the rest of it set. A lot of babies around too. work. And like General Motors and General Electric gives them some quotes, and they're like, we don't want to spend that kind of money. So they're like, you know what? We want better visibility, better gearing, to do different types of work. They're like, you know what?